themselves. We reached out to the person that contacted if they wanted us to get involved, and he said no, he would handle it. But this kind of stuff is happening, and it's happening around the country. On that homework assignment, the answers for Sharia and Jihad are given to the student so they can't get it wrong. You'll see it when you go home and look at your sheets. Okay, here's a little video to play.
Welcome back to Hannity. World History textbook in the Florida public school system is raising serious concerns over its alleged Islamic bias. Now, the textbook has been used in 9th grade advanced placement classes in Brevard County schools for the past 3 years. It is now under review by the school board. Let's take a look inside this book. Now, first, as you can see on the screen, the book has a major chapter on Islam titled Muslim Civilizations. By the way, keep in mind, it has 0 chapters on Christianity or Judaism. The chapter goes on to teach about the Prophet Muhammad and how he became God's messenger. Even describes jihad as a, quote, holy war to defend Islam. Here now with the book in hand and more details on the controversy, Fox News Radio's Todd Starnes.
This is it, Sean. 36 pages in this textbook dedicated to Islam and the Prophet Muhammad. Not one chapter about Christianity, not one positive mention about Jesus. They say that some people believe he may be the Savior, but they declare definitively that Muhammad is God's messenger. Public school.
Let's talk. And you said they're defining jihad, interpreting as a holy war to defend Islam, but again, the victims.
Exactly. As a matter of fact, I mean, through the entire chapter, Sean, I mean, Islam is defended. They talk about how wonderful Islam is to women. I mean, you think that they were having Victoria's Secret stores over there, I mean, by reading this.
Women who can't drive or go to school.
That's right. Or the women who are stoned, who've been brutally assaulted and murdered. None of that is mentioned here in this book.
Or the women under Sharia that need 4 male eyewitnesses to prove rape.
Well, it goes so far as to even redefine history, reconstruct history. They talk about the Crusades. Whenever the Christians do something, they call it a massacre. But whenever the Muslims do something, they call it an occupation.
Well, big difference. Why, if it's a world history book, and they're going to deal with the sensitive topic of religions, why not comparative religions?
It's a great question, and unfortunately, the publisher of this book is not giving us the answer to that question. I called Pearson publishers. They wouldn't talk to us. They gave us a prepared statement. They're defending this. They say it's fair and balanced. But look, school board members are telling me in Brevard County that it's not fair and balanced. They've had a chance to read this, and they had big problems with it. But this is bigger than just Brevard County. Sean, when I did my original story, we started getting emails from all over the country, parents saying they had similar issues. And we understand that a study's been done by the Citizens for National Security, and they tell me that at least 80 textbooks that are in use right now are filled with Muslim bias. This is happening all across the country.
Is it just bias, or is it also a whitewashed, politically correct version? For example, the definition of jihad is wrong.
Exactly. I mean, it's not only whitewashing history, it's also distorting what jihad and what other definitions like that really are. And the reason why is this. There is an organization called the Institute on Religious and Civic Values. They have an advisor. They were an academic advisor to this book. Now, you might say that seems like a fairly normal organization. Innocuous. They changed their name. They used to be known as the Council on Islamic Education.
Pretty amazing. Where's the ACLU? We're liberals that don't want any religion or the mention of Jesus or prayer in school.
Cue the crickets. Look, you put baby Jesus in the school play, the ACLU's filing a lawsuit. You have teachers saying grace as they did it to one school in the Florida Panhandle. They're threatened with jail. But they haven't issued one statement about 36 pages of Islamic doctrine, Bible verses from the Quran in here. No Bible verses, but the Quran is in this public school textbook.
Do you think this outcry that started, do you think it will end in this being removed?
That could be. Just a few moments ago, a school board member called me from Brevard County. She's introducing this to the entire board. She has grave concerns about what she read in here. And we could see this book revised, rewritten, or possibly removed from the school system.
All right, Todd, great investigative work as usual. Todd Starnes, Fox News Radio, and...
Okay, well, it hasn't been removed yet. They're still using it. In fact, Brevard County, Florida, which is now, that was Brevard County, Volusia County, Florida, was down the street, well, not, downstate from Brevard. Parents got upset there. There was a large school board meeting. There were a couple hundred parents sitting in the parking, or standing in the parking lot waiting to go in. And the Justice Department called and canceled, had that meeting canceled. That has never happened before, where a Justice Department, a U.S. Federal Justice Department, gets involved in a local school board issue. So this was August of 2013. When we first started going around with our presentations, this is one of the things we've shown. So I haven't pulled it because it hasn't been removed yet. It's still battling, they're still battling this book down there. Now, the good news, I guess I can tell you, is that this Islamic propaganda has been going on in full court press for about 15 years. There are organizations around the country. We just had our last meeting, organization Truth in Texas Textbooks, which the country generally follows Texas's lead. They had a group of about 50 people review all the text, or about half of the textbooks down there, and go to the board, or go to the state school board and the legislature, and going through and pointing out and rating them, and pointing out how many problems there were. The publishers were fighting them on, but most of the time the review board won. So we have been involved with them, and we're going to start something like that in Ohio. So, and other states are doing it as well. And this is the battle we're in. Can't get nothing done on a federal level. It's all being done state level. Whatever state wants to wake up to this nonsense. Okay, Common Core, something that hasn't been talked about very much, but one that Arnie Duncan talks about the partners, the many partners that we have. Well, the Qatar Foundation International is one of those partners that they're not telling you about. QFI.org is their website, and they are owned by the government of Qatar. This building is in downtown DC, right near our Department of Education. They've taken over the top couple of floors, and they're involved intricately with Common Core. So I have a couple of handouts, I believe, but as we get through, develop this educational process, we're going to go into a lot more than this. When you go on their website, you'll find a series of videos. One of the ones in particular is called Why Allah, and the letter is Y, and then spelled out Allah. It's a formative video about our students going over to Doha, Qatar, or Cairo, or wherever, and learning about their culture and learning that the common theme is all the green energy things. So climate change, protecting Mother Earth, et cetera, et cetera. The only religion or culture involved is Islam, of course. There's no Christianity in there. But the common, so I don't know if this is the progressive's way of determining a common enemy for both cultures is the climate, but you can make your own, if you go on there and look at some of the things, that's what it's all pertaining to. Okay, there's a website called Stop Qatar Now. This just came out last fall, the Qatar Awareness Campaign, trying to tell the public, and letters were sent by these people. Alan West is involved, Frank Gaffney, many other national security leaders, to explain who the government of Qatar is, who the the Muslim Brotherhood is. And one of the reasons we have a problem is because our Chamber of Commerce now has set up a branch there in Doha, Qatar. They don't even realize who they're in bed with, basically. Okay, in the universities, 75,000 student visas were given out last year. 15,000 of these kids never went to school. We don't know who they are or where they're at. Saudi Arabia and Qatar are pumping millions of dollars into Middle Eastern studies departments all throughout the country, major universities. They donate, they bring their own students in, they bring their own professors in, and then they brainwash the kids. What the Muslim Students Associates run rampant. Something latest that was mentioned in the video, and this just happened, is I believe at the start of this school year, there are schools like Berkeley, California, Cal Irvine, some down in Texas. I'm sure there's probably some up in the Northeast, where they're actually having classes or courses on Islamophobia. So they're telling their students, go out and find, articles about berating or deriding or criticizing Islam, and then bringing in. So they're brainwashing the kids that you criticize that you're Islamophobe. Okay, Northeast Ohio Consortium of Middle Eastern Studies. This is a Middle Eastern Studies department, or group of departments set up by our local schools. I haven't checked this recently, but this used to be on their website. So Case, Baldwin Walsh, John Carroll, Kent, Oberlin, Cleveland State. These are their community partners, and you'll see right here in the middle is CARE. So we have our own colleges around here, don't even realize who they're involved with. It's one of their community partners. Okay, in foreign policy, Egypt. The Arab Spring happened, the Muslim Brotherhood was waiting in the wings. We helped them get installed. The Muslim Brotherhood rose, Christians and non-Muslims were persecuted. Then the Egyptians said no. I've been challenged before by some Muslims, and I've told them, look, we support the Muslims who got rid of the Muslim Brotherhood. El-Sisi, the military, the Egyptians there, they wanted no part of the extreme Sharia law that Morsi was putting into place. Our politicians, Louis Gohmert, Michelle Bachmann, Trent Franks, they've been over to Egypt, and the Egyptians are meeting with them and saying, what happened to the U.S.? What is wrong with you guys? This is in Tahrir Square now. Obama supports terrorism. This is El-Sisi giving a speech at the United Nations. Okay, you cannot see things clearly when you are locked in this ideology. He's speaking the truth about Islam. Gave a very historical speech on New Year's Eve about saying, look, we have 1.6 billion Muslims. Are we going to kill the rest of the population of the earth? And talking at El Azhar University, where the Cairo speech was given by Obama in 2009, and calling for a reformation, basically, of Islam. We'll see if he lasts. In Syria, our enemies are basically fighting our enemies. We have Assad, Iran, and Hezbollah on one side, Syrian rebels, which we were sold a good bill of goods on that. We do that right up front. There were no Free Syrian Army. This is all about arming Al-Qaeda and the Muslim Brotherhood to try to take out Assad. So we are funding the Muslim Brotherhood when we send arms to those Free Syrian armies. And then those rebels are in other groups over there, Al-Nusra and all these little, most of these alphabet soup groups, they're all caving and joining ISIS anyway. So we basically funded ISIS. Result, this is what's happening to Christians in the Muslim world, whether it be in Iraq, Syria, North Africa. Okay, I mentioned earlier when I got here about the Muslim Brotherhood with the Nazis. This is al-Husseini, who was a Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, worked with Hitler in World War II. Those who ignore history are destined to repeat it, so we're looking at history recoming again. Churchill got it, Beatty gets it. Okay, Benghazi. We don't have enough time to go through all this, but I can tell you Act for America is responsible for working with Congressman Frank Wolf to get introduced H.R. 36, which was the call for the Select Committee on Benghazi. Go around and talk to different representatives, like I have, try to get legislation passed. It never happens until you get somewhere in the upper 100s, is the way it's been explained to me, for a number of sponsors in the Congress, for something to move. Finally, when it got up to about 175 co-sponsors on this H.R. 36, the call for a select committee, Boehner, who was holding it back, finally caved, but it wasn't necessarily the numbers of congressmen, it's because of Ben Rhodes' emails were found by Judicial Watch, where the talking points were all changed, and then he had to cave due to the political pressure. I can tell you this about Benghazi, not only were we running guns to the rebels through Turkey into Syria, but this had absolutely nothing to do with that video that they tried to tell you about. I can't wait to see this played run on the TV 24/7. Okay, this is where I'm going to get personal because I can't do this as Act for America chapter leader. Okay, we're supposed to be nonpartisan, but I can tell you as Dan Ramada, I want you to see something. This should be our deciding factor on who we elect.
Powerful interests have tried to capture Washington and rig the system in their favor. The power of well-funded special interests tilts our democracy away from the people and toward the powerful. Action is required to defend our great democracy against those who would see it perverted into one more rigged game where the rich and the powerful always win.
Yeah, it should be interesting. This is an ad done by Elizabeth Warren that American Crossroads is going to take up. I'm not supposed to get political in this. However, to me, knowing everything I know, and we've been studying for years and seeing where we're heading, I want to vote for an official period. It has nothing to do with these people. I don't care who they are. If they have a D after the name or R after the name. Okay, Uma Abedin, married Anthony Weeder and aide to Hillary when she was Secretary of State. Also got in a little hot water because she was, besides also getting a consulting gig on the side that wasn't approved and getting paid for both. Michelle Bachmann put out a letter in 2012 to all the inspector generals asking for an investigation of the Muslim Brotherhood, asking for an investigation of what happened to the Holy Land Foundation trial. It was signed by Trent Franks, Louis Gohmert, Lynn Westmoreland, and Tom Rooney. They were called the National Security Five. This happened in June of 2012. They were immediately, because she asked about Uma Abedin, and that's the only name that was mentioned in the letter, where she was immediately taken to the woodshed. And she was taken to the woodshed by John Boehner and John McCain. It went nowhere. Let's see. She's been out talking to people. She's no longer in Congress. Obama's friends are America's enemies. Americans need to look no further than the words of the Muslim Brotherhood to understand that they are not a friend of America or Israel. Okay, after Benghazi, Obama went to the UN a couple weeks later and said the future must not belong to those who slander the Prophet of Islam. Even though they knew that this was a terrorist attack at Benghazi, they still tried to BS the public and the world by going to the UN and saying this. And there's a reason he did this. Well, besides that. Okay. I told you about the OIC earlier, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. At this time, at the same time, since Hillary was Secretary of State, she started working with the OIC on something that they've been after, the worldwide blasphemy laws, basically, defamation of religion. It's called UN 1618. And this started, they've been trying this since the 90s to get this implemented around the world. We've always laughed at them. We have the First Amendment. So we've given no concessions until Hillary became Secretary of State. Then she conducted a series of 3 meetings. It's called the Istanbul process, because it started in Istanbul, Turkey. Then there was a meeting in Europe. And then we had a meeting in Washington, D.C. on how to implement this. Basically, they said we can do it by peer pressure. So what they do is they changed our guidelines in the training manuals in the government. That's at the federal level. Then they withhold funds to the state and local levels to make them change their stuff. Then they get to like Facebook and other corporations about, restricting speech, et cetera, et cetera. They go to talk to the AP and other news organizations, and then all of a sudden we're talking about extremists, violent extremists, and we're not really saying what the problem is. So this has been going on. The target year for getting this implemented by the OIC was 2015. So we'll see what happens. This is the big battle this year. The Cairo Declaration happened in 1990, about the same time that this plan for North America was drafted. The Islamic world's position on human rights was made clear when the representatives of the Muslim nations met in Cairo as the OIC and voiced their opposition to the UN Universal Declaration on Human Rights. In place of the UN Declaration, the OIC issued the Cairo Declaration, which asserted that the only human rights Muslims recognize are those permitted under Islamic Sharia. So this shows you their mindset. This is back in 1990. Andrew McCarthy, who was in the video, prosecutor in New York, federal prosecutor, wrote a book called Faithless Execution for Obama's impeachment. He said it won't happen, but he laid out all the reasons why it should. He also wrote a book called How Obama Embraces Islam's Sharia Agenda. You can get this on Amazon for $6, and I brought a copy. And in the very back, and I'll just paraphrase because of the lighting, but in the very back of the book, Justice Elena Kagan talks about where she can see where it's very, not only possible, but like the right thing to do to prohibit speech when it becomes politically correct to do so or politically expedient to do so, something like that. So we have a Supreme Court justice talking about how she can find a way to limit our free speech. Okay, so here's another step in the wrong direction. Losing control of the internet to the feds. Lee Goodman, who was a former chairman and commissioner of the Federal Election Commission, and he was appointed by Obama, by the way, he said that government takeover of the internet will chill political speech. The government will regulate the content, specifically the political content, that the American people can both post online, express their own political opinions, and the political content, information that people can access from the internet. Said Goodman, who was appointed in 2013 by the FEC. So, here's a guy that's on the board telling us what's going to happen. So if we don't fight this now, and just sit back and let them do it, we're in trouble. We're basically in trouble. Okay, the plan lays it out, as you saw in that video last week, that the process of settlement is a civilization jihadist process, what all the word means. The Ikhwan, that's what they call themselves, must understand that their work in America is a kind of a grand jihad, eliminating and destroying the Western civilization from within and sabotaging its miserable house by their hands and the hands of the believers, so that it is eliminated and God's religion is made victorious over all other religions. Back to the OIC. Not only are they trying to get this defamation of religion or stop all criticism of Islam, but they have tremendous influence over the UN High Commissioner of Refugees. So they are helping determine which refugees we take in our society. In Syria, and guess what? They're mostly Muslims. We're not getting the Christians from the Middle East. ISNA, the Islamic Society of North America, on that page with all the groups listed as interfaith partners. Well, these are the organizations that are helping to bring in, they're taking federal funds and helping bringing these refugees to our country. And you'll see right at the top one, U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops. There's Episcopalians, Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, Church World Services, World Relief Corporation, Lutheran Immigrant Aid Society. All these people, it's a cash cow for them. They're getting paid by the federal government to bring in refugees, and they have no idea what they're doing to us. This woman, Ann Corcoran, runs Refugee Resettlement Watch. I was on the Bob Frantz show briefly this morning and mentioned this to him. And this is what everybody's got to pay attention to. She has an excellent blog, all kinds of articles. She's involved. She was just in South Carolina with Frank Gaffney and a lot of big national security team members explaining what's happening. These refugees are coming in. This is the fundamental transformation of America. We're bringing in a lot of immigrants. Chain migration is happening. Refugees, we don't even know who these refugees are. They could be terrorists, could be jihadists, whatever. But we're bringing them in, and we're going to be they're going to be forming their own seedlings, or seeding towns, basically, and not assimilating. Once this happens, this is what's happening in Europe. Chuck said you watched Europe's Last Stand. This is the plan for all of us. This is what Islam is all about. The concept of al-Hijra. Muhammad told the Muslims, go and migrate and spread Islam. This is what they're trying to do. Refugees, we showed this movie as well to our group over on the west side back in January and February. Okay. Basically, they have the mosques and Islamic centers, all the infrastructure, many of it set up. They have their organizations, they've involved them in government. We have about 2,300 mosques now in the country, as opposed to 800 in the year 2000. Mosques are springing up in, Montana. This is an older map, by the way, but I'm reading reports of mosques showing up in Montana, Idaho, Alaska. People are going, what? Why is there a mosque being built? Well, they know exactly what they're doing. We just don't know what their plans are. Okay, let's back up a second. It's not in this slide, but I happened to see an email about a week ago, I should put it in here, where it's a commercial for Citibank. And the president of Citibank is making a statement talking about how they're going to rebuild the cities and this and that. So, whether you want to take it to Agenda 21 or whatever. But his comment is fascinating. The first thing's out of his mouth is, for the next 40 years, we're going to have 90 million more Americans in our country. Well, think about that. My kids are in their upper 20s. They're going to have 2 kids each. I've heard their conversations with their wives. That's what we're doing nowadays. 2, 3 kids tops. We're not going to be upping our population 25% by birth rates? It's got to be through immigration. The National Cathedral in DC. Back in the fall, the Episcopalians that run this thought it would be a good idea to let the Muslims pray there. Well, the problem that they don't realize is when you do that in Islam, it's called it's called waqf. W-A-Q-F. It's pronounced, it doesn't pronounce like it spells. And it's a doctrine of sacred space. So when a Muslim prays there, that now becomes Muslim ground. They own it for Islam. That's what happened at Islam, at the National Cathedral. That's what they also tried to do at Duke. And then Franklin Graham stepped in and complained about it, and then donors backed off and stopped it. But it is happening around the country.
Oh, sad.
The Islamic Society of North America, in case you forgot this from last week, this is all you have to remember. This is who these people are.
Our job is to change the Constitution of America.
Okay, so that was in 2006 at their annual convention. Their job is to change our Constitution. Okay, so this is basically what we're up against. We have the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, or Conference, is what they're called, the Muslim Brotherhood, Al-Qaeda, or physical kinetic jihad, and then a political correctness, all pushing down at us. So what can you do? Join us and learn the issue. Take Frank Gaffney's course, which is called the Muslim Brotherhood in America.com. I would say have water and aspirin ready as you start to do it, but it's necessary to learn how this all started, how the Republicans are involved, how they've affected both parties. They even got into the conservative movement, and there's pushback there as well. But we have no choice now. You've got to learn what's going on. This is Frank Gaffney, Center for Security Policy. We had him in town last summer in Brecksville. He was a former Undersecretary of Defense under Ronald Reagan. And he knows, he's probably, he knows more than Brigitte, let's just put it that way. Brigitte's more vocal, but Frank gets around and talks to a lot of people, and has a Center for Security Policy.org is his website, as well as MuslimBrotherhoodInAmerica.com. This is a screenshot from his overview, but it talks about the different problems, basically, the threat doctrine of Sharia and the Muslim Brotherhood. But if you don't have time to do anything but this week and go to chapter 9, you'll see exactly what Team Obama is doing in the Islamist agenda. Chapter 8 spells out who they are, but if you don't have any time, chapter 9, which is, I believe, 2 hours long, so watch it in parts if you have to, but he lays it out exactly what DOD is doing, DHS, Justice, White House, Justice Department, etc. Department by department, State Department. Okay, what else can you do? Push your state legislators on ALAC when it's time. Get involved with us. We'll, at some point when we have the bill, what we'll do is we'll send out emails, okay, contact the committee that it's in, get it out of the committee to the floor for a vote, and then, you know, start hounding the legislators to pass it. This is the world we live in now. I mean, I never did any of this stuff. A lot of people never did any of this stuff. But now that I've gone this training, I've gone to DC, I've talked to other people around the country, this is what we have to do. It's us to do this, and we have to get involved and yell at these people, basically, push them to do what we want to do. Michelle Bachmann last year, in the summer, introduced HR 5194. This is something that we would do. We went to see Congressman Renacci. He said he would sign on. That was October. We were going to talk to Dave Joyce, but we ran out of time. Anyway, she retired, and we're waiting to get this reintroduced, hopefully. And basically, it's an 18-page bill that explains pretty much everything I was talking about with the Holy Land Foundation trial, and mentions the groups, etc., and wants to get them designated as a terrorist organization. Well, that would blow the doors off of everything if that were to happen. Now, we'll see if it gets reintroduced, how many co-sponsors it gets. We'll see if Republican establishment stops it from going anywhere. We'll be all over this issue if once it comes to whatever's going to happen. All right, so how do you get involved with this? Sign up for our Act for America emails. Go on the Act for America website where